Hello everybody, welcome back to Fox Outdoor Sports. What we're going to do today is go through the Ned Rig and the way I fish it, the way I use it, and the reasons I use it. We're going to start off with why I use it, and then we'll go into the baits, the hooks, how to rig it, and then finally we'll end up with where to fish it. So, why the Ned Rig? Simply, it's the best way to load the boat with fish. If you want to go out and have a 10-15 fish day, fish the Ned Rig. They won't all be quality fish. So you'll have a bunch of dinkers and you'll have a few average fish, and you might be able to hook a really nice fish with this technique, but they're not all going to be 5+ pound bass. And there's just, when you fish the Ned Rig, you've just got to realize that that's just the way it's going to be. But if you're new to fishing and you want to get into bass fishing, this is a great way to do that. It's not super expensive. The baits last a long time. The hooks are easy. They're easy to rig. They're easy to fish. They're simple to use. This is a good way to get started in bass fishing. We'll go ahead and move on to the baits. What we're going to use, I don't have a ton of baits for this. I used to, but I really toned it down on what I use and what I think are optimum baits. So we'll go bait size. You can use a lot of different baits, but the biggest you want to use is 3.5 inches long. That's the biggest. At the most is 3.5 inches. I don't use anything longer than that. And then you want sleek baits. You don't want big baits that have a bunch of appendages flapping on them and stuff like that. You don't want that. You want sleek, toned down, dead action baits. You don't want these things doing a whole lot of work. That defeats the purpose of the Ned Rig. You don't want them kicking all over the place. You don't want them doing that. You want baits that just sit there and that's all they do. You don't want them flapping. So, first bait I use 3 Z-Man baits. I use the Finesse TRDs. That's probably my number 2 bait. It's really good. I buy it in 3 colors. I buy it in the deal, I buy it in green pumpkin, and I buy it in this color right here called Molten Craw. And I only use the green pumpkin and the deal most of the time, except for in the spring, because in the spring, when the bass are really keying in on crawdads, the color red in this just orange, burnt orange to black color is phenomenal. It's unbeatable. Just like when you fish, if you're going to fish a red and black lipless crankbait and you're just smashing them, you get this out and fish this, you'll be doing way better, and you might even get a higher quality bite. Now, the deal color, this is my number 1 color. And the reason being is because it's two-tone. I really enjoy two-tone baits. So it's got that green pumpkin, watermelon color on top, and then it's got a pearlized white on the bottom. But the thing about it too, I don't know if you can see it. I don't know why I keep putting this down. I'm holding it up to the camera. I don't know if you can see it in there, but it's got just the slightest hint of a blue pearlescence on it. And I don't know if you've ever looked at a bluegill or any other bait fish, but they have just the slightest amount of blue on them. Secondly, this is probably my number 1 bait. Not necessarily in this color, but this is my number 1 bait. This is the TRD Ticklers. And I really enjoy fishing a tube, but I don't enjoy having to replace my tube every time I catch a fish or every time it just gets too beat up on the rocks. So, if you want to do that, get the Ticklers. They're short, they have 4 appendages on the back that splay out as soon as the bait sits still. As soon as you move it, they close up and it darts, and as soon as it sits still, they open back up again, which is really nice. I've caught so many fish on the Ticklers. It's just unbelievable. And the quality of fish too. I've caught very high quality fish on the Ticklers. My dad actually caught a 5+ pounder out at the golf course a while back using these. Not this specific one, because he was using the deal color, but the same type of bait he was using, and it worked really, really well. I've caught several good ones on it in the last few weeks. You catch plenty of fish when you use them. They're just really, really high quality. And then the last Z-Man product I'll use, I don't have any with me because I've only ordered them, but the last one I'm going to use is the TRD Bugs, and that is the beaver bait that's made by Z-Man, and it's very, very good. I believe it's just shy of 3.5 inches long. Most of these are. This one is This one is 2 3/4. This is 2 3/4. But the reason I want that Bugs that's a little bit longer is because if I'm catching good fish on these and I size up to that Bugs, it'll help you get a bigger fish. Which is going to bring us into our next bait. This is the Reaction Innovation Smallie Beaver. This is a 3.5 inch beaver bait. Something to be said about fishing these on a Ned rig: they do not stand up. They will not just float up like these Z-Man products do. The Elastec is second to none when it comes to flotation, which is why I use just a tiny bit heavier head than most people recommend. But I like my baits to stick to the bottom really well. But these float really, really well. This bait does not do that. It does not stand up. So you're going to need to realize that if you're going to fish these. But they just drag along the bottom, and those flaps kick as soon as, if it goes over a rock, those flaps will flare out, and then they go back to doing nothing. Or if you bump it along or hop it up, it just perfectly stands still, and then it falls back down. It doesn't have a lot of action. That's why I like these as well. A lot of people consider these to be a jig trailer, which I do as well. I use them for that pretty frequently. But they're just so good. Beaver baits are so good at being a Ned rig bait if you can find one small enough. And if you don't want to buy these are kind of expensive. If you don't want to buy these, get the Yum Woolly Bug, or Baby Woolly Bug. I believe that's a 3.5 inch bait as well. And that's what I started with, and it was really good. And then I went to these, and it just blew them out of the water. They're so, so good. And then my next non-Z-Man bait is going to be this. It's made by Sematus Baits. It doesn't even have a name on it. I'm thinking it's probably something experimental. But I actually got it in a mystery tackle box that was made for drop shotting. And it's a drop shot bait. You can see it's got a flat side to it. And then over here it's got the KVD half shell design where you rig it up on a drop shot like this and it just flutters all over the place. But if you put this on a Ned rig, it is amazing the amount of twist and flip and kick it has. But as soon as you kill it and stop moving it, it just sits there perfectly still. And you just hop it and it flutters and it stops and it just sits there perfectly still. And this is another one that is really neutrally buoyant. So if you have a stand-up head, it sits perfectly straight up and down just like that. Very, very good bait. And I can't find these anymore, so if you know where to find these, leave them in the description below, because I only have this one pack. It came with 10 in it, and I only have 4 left. These are very, very good baits, and I want some more of them, so if you know where to get them, let me know. Lastly, this is the 10,000 Fish Sakoshi Bug. And the reason I like this is because it's a little bit bigger than your traditional Z-Man baits. It's just a little bit fatter, almost as long, but it's got that ribbing on it where it really, really moves a lot of water. So these baits I fish in clear water, but when I need to attract a fish, when I need to get their attention and have a few more feet of drawing power, that's what I go to. Alright, sorry about that, my camera battery's dead, I had to change them out. So, I think I had just finished up talking about the baits, so we'll go into the hooks next. I use 3 hooks. I don't get complicated, I use 3 different types. I use this one. This is the Ned Rig or the Z-Man Finesse Shrooms head. 2 notes about these heads. If you look right here, it's got a welded keeper. It's got a welded bait keeper. That's very, very important for these Ned Rig baits. And the reason that's important is because it this Elastec is very, very stretchy and very hard to tear. Well, when you put it on to, say, a hard hat jig's head, they have a wire keeper that's not welded, it's not flush. When you put it on there, that bait, the material from that bait gets wedged down in between there. Rather than just poking on and getting hooked on there, it wedges down in between there and it tries to pull itself off as you're fishing. I do not like that at all. So I buy the Ned Rig, I spend a little bit of money on them. I buy the Ned Rig finesse shroom's head, and they're very, very strong hooks. So if you're gonna go Ned Rig fishing, spend the money, buy the good heads. Second thing, you notice that is not a very big jig head. This is the 1/16 ounce jig heads. That is the biggest one I buy. I mean, it's very, very universal for all of these baits, except for the Reaction Innovation Sweet Beaver, which will bring me into my next one here. This is an Arky stand-up head. It's a little bit bigger than the other hooks because it needs, you use it for a bigger bait. I mean, this 3.5 inch bait is substantial, and this stand-up head does a really, really good job of keeping it. It's got a quality hook on it. It's got a good keeper on it, especially for these regular plastisol baits. Very, very quality. And then it's got a very limber, I don't have to put much pressure on that at all, very, very limber weed guard on it. And it's round, so I mean, you can put it on your finger and it just stands up perfect. Unless you're shaky, then it falls off your finger. And lastly, if I'm fishing in the cheese, if I'm fishing in the moss, fishing in grass, just nasty stuff, I fish the Finesse Shroom's Texas Rig version of it. And that I almost always pair up with the TRD ticklers. You put that on there and it just looks like a perfect little bait fish just bumping along the bottom, being a little bait fish getting ready to be eaten. Now here's a note about this. With these ticklers and with these finesse TRDs, you want to exposed Texas rig. You don't reskin hook it. You fish it completely exposed. And that material is soft enough that it just a tiny little press will take it and will mash that bait down where when you get that hook set, you got them. It's very, very, very easy to mess yourself up by text posing, which is what I think they call it, text posing, where you reskin hook that bait, and you don't want to do that. Second thing here is right here there's a little bit of weight just to keep this hook oriented where it's sitting vertical, which is very, very important. So when you rig these, you have to make sure that you get that Elastec up and over that little spot right there, otherwise it won't work properly. And with these Elastec made baits, that's very, very easy to do. But with the Sakoshi bug, with the Somatis baits, with the other plastisol style baits that I've ever used, that's not an option. It'll just rip them to shreds and you can't reuse them. So just use those with the Elastec baits. So we'll go into where to fish these. The regular Ned Rig Finesse Shroom's head, I fish it most of the time. This is what I start with. And I fish that in small rock to chunk rock. You don't want to be fishing it where there's really, really bad riprap or anything like that, because it will get stuck a lot and it doesn't have a weed guard on it. So you're going to be hanging up on everything that this bait bumps over. That's why I like fishing on small to medium sized rock. It's really, really good for that. The Arky stand-up head, I'm fishing that anywhere I don't want to fish the finesse shrooms. Anywhere that I can not get away with fishing that finesse shrooms, like in riprap, in just really, really nasty chunk rock. Where else will I fish those? Right up on the banks when the water's shallow, when it rains and the fish move up. Oh man, that's a killer combination. You get the big bass on it, you get the little bass on it, you get anything that wants to eat on that head, and it's really, really good. And then, like I said a minute ago, the Texas rig version, you're fishing it in the nasty stuff. You're fishing it in the grass, the tules, the lily pads. Anywhere you don't want to fish an exposed hook, that's where you want to fish it. It's very, very, very easy to fish in there. And what's really nice about this is it has a vertical line tie and a wedge-shaped head, so that if you do cast it back in that cheese, you can just perfectly work it through that grass, and it just splits through the grass super easy. These baits aren't long, they won't get hung up in the grass, they're not stubby, they won't get hung up. They don't have a big huge curly tail kicking behind them that's going to get tangled. Very good for that as well. I see a lot of people say, oh, don't fish it in the grass, oh, don't fish it here, it'll get hung up. That's true, but if you do it this way, you'll minimize your problems and you'll catch more fish. Let's go through how I rig one of these real quick. I'll show you just my most basic generic rig, and I do something that's a little different with these. I use super glue, and super glue is very important when you're Ned rig fishing. So what you want to do, these have a front and a back. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but they have a front side and they have a back side. The back side has all these little tiny bumps on it, and the front side is just smoothly ribbed. So you want to start with the front side. You want to start with that ribbed side, and you go right in the center of the bait as straight as you can possibly get it on there. Go to about right there, and then pop that hook through. Next, what you want to do, you want to take your super glue, and you want to put just the smallest little drop of super glue you can muster right there on the head of that hook. And then you push your bait up to it. Let it dry out, and that's it. That's all the Ned rig is. It's that easy, and it just sits there and wiggles, and that, it will never come loose. I'm pulling on it and it's barely dried and it's not coming loose. I might have actually rigged through just a little too far on that one. And what you can do if you do that, just give it a little bit of a tear, or push it down on the bait a little, push it down on the hook a little more, and it'll help you out. And that's it. That's it. That's what I fish most of the time when I'm doing this. But the way you fish them is not aggressive. You don't want to be really jerking on them and yanking them through things. You just want to be bumping it along the bottom, making it wiggle, making it dance. And that's it. I mean, you can even, in the wintertime, you dead action these baits. You cast them out, you let them sit there for, I don't know, 20 seconds, maybe 20 seconds, and then you just shake them a little bit, let them sit for a minute longer, nothing happens. Drag it along the bottom 4 or 5 feet, let it sit there, shake it a little bit, nothing happens, drag it along the bottom. When the fish are a little more aggressive in the summertime, I really work the bait. I don't really give it aggressive hops or anything like that, but I'll shake it along the bottom, and then I'll reel down to feel tension, and then I'll shake it along the bottom and reel down to feel tension, and that's the only 2 ways I fish it. I don't hop them, I don't jerk them through things. You don't fish these baits aggressively, they're not meant for that. But if you guys have any more questions about this, go ahead and leave them down in the comments, and I'll answer them as I can get to them. I really hope you guys appreciate this kind of video. This is going to be the style of video I try to do for a couple of weeks here. It's very easy for me to glaze through things and really not sit down and tell you guys about them. And in my last few videos, my best fish have been on the Ned rig. So I'm going to kind of try and do a little bit more in-depth videos on some things that I use really frequently. And I figured I'd start with my favorite technique. So I hope you guys like and subscribe, and leave comments down below if you want to see some more stuff like this, or if you have any more ideas for the channel for things like this. But I appreciate you guys watching, and as always, y'all be good.